when I was going through this entire process of making this story, I kind of wanted to. I don't know. I never felt like I got the idea across of what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I decided to just kind of do a full-on voiceover of all of the time lapses that I had collected throughout drawing up and burning up this door. So, here we go. So the first symbol here, that the lines that are kind of forming out here, are kind of the core fundamental idea of a lot of my art. It is actually the same design that is tattooed on my arm up there. It's just kind of a symbol that's come to mean like the beginning of everything for me. It's like everything has to have a fundamental starting point, and this is just philosophically the starting point that I always look to. It's what kind of gives me that like sense of comfort. Like whenever I'm making something, it's where do you start? You start with this design, and then you just kind of work from it, and just kind of go with the flow, see what happens with it. In this particular instance, I actually decided to go with the same thing as with my tattoo, and put it in a circle, and then I was kind of lost a little bit, so I just started measuring off lines, putting out things, and then decided to get on the idea of a, just kind of like a crystal type thing, which started by just literally me having like prongs coming off of the circle. There was no plan to make it a crystal in the beginning, but then it just kind of felt right once everything started coming into place. The blankets everywhere are just kind of because laying on a door for multiple hours, drawing and erasing and then redrawing, it gets really painful really fast. But the kind of the spastic nature of things here is me just drawing out the bricks and then subsequently burning them. But all these clips are originally taken at 1 frame every second, and then shot out at 30 frames a second, but some parts were just kind of so tedious that I sped them up again to 300 and 400 times. This one, the next one, I think is at 300. But the idea here was just I wanted to get something on this side going, just to kind of give me an idea, and it was, kept on going with the brick thing at the bottom. Not really any reason for it, just, again, kind of felt like what I should be doing. Hilariously enough, in a few seconds, well, there, actually, one of my tips broke, and then on this, coming up right here, I screw up the design right there. Yep, there. And you can kind of see, because I'm like, that's how most of everything kind of comes to be, is, screw up, I burn one too many lines, and then have to just figure out what I can do to fix it. In this case, it was frantically make the thing look like it was burned. Like the actual brickwork kind of was charred and burning away. Which, unfortunately, you can't get too great of a view, but at this part at least, but it gets closer parts, like, from here on out. This is just kind of like the, going off the original, like, chart idea. It's just kind of like putting in cracks in the bricks, kind of giving the idea that they've been broken apart and charred to pieces, and then kind of doing this little flame design that I like for, well, I just like the design. It's fire. Threw in a clock there just to kind of give an idea of the actual time scale of what's going by here. And then this is a closer up version of what I was doing in that corner up there. Just kind of burn, like, using the big charred areas to kind of cover up any, like, misguided lines that I put on there. Kind of had ticks and put them slightly off in the wrong direction, kind of cover them up with just a sheer face of burning. Pretty much the universal solution to everything when it comes to my art. But yeah, it's just kind of been continuing down this pattern, and I kind of liked how it was looking, so I just kept on doing it all the way down until the bottom. Yeah. This next part was, this took about at least 7 sketches. It was just a big, I wanted a big flame to kind of justify all the little fires that were going up around the crystal and kind of put a way to connect all of them together. So I kind of was sketching out rough ideas of how I wanted it and just didn't like the first few ones, so just used the good old-fashioned eraser and just blasted it apart, redrew it, blasted it apart, redrew it again, and then eventually I got something I liked, and that's this. Didn't really want to push it down to the bottom because I kind of had a different plan with that, because I kind of wanted to do a kind of like a clashing of elements like fire and water, which actually led to me taking like about a month break on this because I didn't want to screw it up because it's a door and it's kind of expensive. And this was literally a month of just thinking about it, drawing it, erasing it, scrapping it, and eventually just giving a rough sketch of it and filling in the areas I thought I would want darker with pencil, and then eventually just kind of giving it like a coarse look to it, like not making any clear decisive lines, just kind of making it so it kind of just goes with it. Just, I don't know, like my style usually is very like defined, very straightforward, like with the bricks, like you can see the straight lines, and with the fire you can see definite lines, and this is like one of the first times I've actually done something away from that style, where I just go at it and just guess. Like for the most part, the only part that was actually sketched out was the base outline, and then there's no more pencil. And that's actually one of the last parts I used pencil on this entire door. There's, I started, like, kind of getting I liked the feel that water kind of gave, and it was like, it just felt it felt how I wanted it to go, and I really liked the way it looked, and then, again, it caused a bit of a problem with me, because then I was just left staring at it, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this water looks so alive, and this big flame thing I made just looks kind of, like, abstract. It doesn't look realistic next to this just mountain of a tsunami that I made crashing straight into it. And it's just such a contrast in styles. It just kind of put me off of it for a little while, and I just walked away and couldn't think of anything to do. Eventually, though, and I think it's the next clip, I kind of figured out how to turn it into something that would work. Yeah. So, I started to just kind of put more, like, jutting off flames that, like, went off of the beaten path and just kind of sparked off as fire does. Didn't really have any sort of plan for the pillar thing there. It just kind of wanted to do it, so I did it. But this is kind of the definition part of the fire. Like, I wanted to make it look a little bit more alive by, like, next to the water, and, like, I put really thick definitive lines on the edges of it, and then kind of trace around with just kind of motion lines almost. Just pushing off of the fire, just kind of making it so it's not as a still piece next to the water, which does the exact same thing. And that's kind of a style I stuck with through a large portion of it. And then this little bit I just kind of wanted to put a little bit more burning because, I mean, there's the huge flame, and then up further up the door, just for sake of consistency. There's little flames can cause like that much burning, and then you have this inferno at the bottom, and no burning bricks just doesn't quite make sense to me. So that's kind of the motivation there. Again, still no motivation for any reason behind that little line thing that's kind of going through. It just looks cool. Kind of wanted it in there. Didn't want to do the same brick all the way up, but I did want to keep it a little bit consistent, kind of almost up to the door handle area on the the other side. Wanted to kind of keep the same feel with the thing. Wanted to give that crystal a little bit more texture, so it wasn't just as like a big flat untextured thing. Just kind of in this part I was just messing with geometric textures as I like doing, making a little bit less, well, a little bit more black and white to give it a little bit more pop to it. Not really much to say on this. It was just me screwing around with it. This is just going further in on that texture. I really wanted to kind of make it so the fire kind of looked like it was coming off of part of the crystal. Like those little lines that are following the circle around kind of lend themselves into the actual the flames that are coming off of it on eventually both sides. And then just kind of doing the thing with the lines on the fire, or on the crystal with the dashes, making it have a little bit of like a sheen to it. Putting a grain back in the door that was sanded away. Just kind of give it a little bit more texture. Passing the time, watching it go up early in the morning, as all of these projects happen to be. This one, the only reason I really did this, and this is at 4 times speed, if you're watching the clock, it's kind of crazy. The core of the design has always been the pinwheel, and it's like, I kind of felt like it was almost too circular on this one. Like the circle, I didn't like how it kind of contrasted with the geometry of the pinwheel. So I just kind of filled in these so it had a little bit more contrast, just to get it going. I don't know. Just felt right, and in the end I'm really happy with how it turned out, so I assume I did the right thing then. As long as I'm happy with it, I guess. Kind of just mirroring the same thing in the bottom here as up on the top, just to, you know, sake and consistency, keep everything parallel, symmetric, you know, kind of how my brain goes. Kept on doing that circle thing, again, mirroring the bottom. Wanted to make it so I had something to jut off of on the side eventually. And this entire part was kind of a shot in the dark for me. Like, this is the biggest piece that I've ever done without sketching out any of it. It's this entire side, from right just below the handle all the way up until the top, is completely free-handed, and was incredibly nerve-wracking to do, because, I mean, you can't really screw up and get away with it with wood burning, because you are literally burning the wood away, and as soon as it's gone, that mark's black, and can't really take it away, short of sanding it. And again, being a door, you don't really want to sand down a door to the point where it wouldn't be seen, because then you'd have a big old dent in the piece, and it doesn't really work. But this is just, I really liked the way that the fire looked on the other side, so I kept on going with it, just kept on burning it up, going up, keeping it going with the theme, just the big blobs of fire coming off the crystal. And I don't know, like I was just trying to get like a big, just the big portion done here. Kind of not fully flesh everything out, but just kind of make it so I could look at it and get an idea of what I want to do. And this entire part, I probably broke 3 or 4 nibs. Because just the heat that I'm pumping into this thing, like, they kind of bend and eventually just kind of snap. And I had just ordered a bunch of new ones, and I was just kind of going through the old ones and just kind of trying to get the final use out of them, which is why I'm constantly changing out the tips here. In the next few clips, I kind of like start just switching off the handle that I'm using, because I didn't want to burn out the new ones, because if you just can't really keep on using the same ones over and over and over, because then they start to bend, break, and snap. And they're not expensive, but they're also not too cheap. They're like about $8 a pop for each one of these ones that I'm using from the majority of the piece. So it's like, well, once I'm done with it, it's just, I don't like spending that much money on the bits when I have to buy 3 or 4 per piece. But, yeah. It's just kind of fleshing out the entirety of everything here. It's changing up the way I was doing the webcam here. I started the way I was doing this kind of jerry-rigged, and it was just not working out too well, so I kind of changed it up, and you can start to see the stand that I'm using in a bit, because there's not really a good way to hide it, because frankly it's just a it's a drum pad with a webcam duct taped to it. Professional as heck, I know. But yeah, it's just kind of going through the motions here, just kind of burning away, getting the thing going, just going, putting a little bit more texture off onto the sides, putting everything in its place, filling up the blank spaces so there's not just a big, like, void in one particular part. And this is where I just start going through everything and just reburning a lot of the lines, making them darker, putting the big textures around the sides, putting a little bit of motion lines like I did in the first one to kind of keep it consistent with everything that I've been doing here, and just basically spending an hour redoing everything that I had been doing for the past 4 hours, because it just looks better. It looks better when it has less empty space to me. It might just be my own personal conjecture, but I don't know. I like it. People that have seen it seem to like it, and it's just kind of becoming my style. It's just like I've gone completely from the geometric designs that are very rigid and measured out 17 times to this, where it's just kind of crazily thrown together and just kind of a blur that's planned, but at the same time just completely random. Not really a huge never was really a huge overarching plan to this entire thing. And yeah, it's just kind of trying to fill in the blank spaces there. I kind of like the idea that I had going with that little volcano on the other side, so I kind of tried to flesh it out in the other part of this and just kind of put a little bit of a different texture on this mountain to tell the difference between the two. Putting a little bit of last details into the burn part, because I just kind of put that part down, because doing that is really tedious. It just gets really old really fast. And then I just decided I didn't really have too much of a plan anymore for the bottom that I could go with, so I just kind of did a little bit of wavy lines. The brickwork on the bottom I didn't really want to burn up too much, because it just didn't seem right. But this is pretty much the finished product. I'll probably throw some like closer pictures in the description of the YouTube video, but yeah, that's the big door. the pretty much final product. I might do a little bit of things with the brickwork in the bottom. But in total, this entire project, after taking all of the time lapses and putting up all the time, drawing, burning, and everything, this is a straight, I think it came down to like 42 hours and like 14 minutes or something. And that's just like just straight being on this door, completely uninterrupted. Like, he spent a lot of time just drinking tea and listening to podcasts and audiobooks. Pretty good pastime. But yeah, that's the door. That is my big project completed. Now for the other side.